Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Daily. Yes. Smallville is trending. Smallville hasn't stopped trending since the 2011 series finale, warts and all. Smallville is one of my favourite television shows of all time, but it goes deeper than that. This is the show that educated me about everything DC Comics. It educated me, or should I say, the companion monthly magazine, published by Titan Comics, educated me. And the show educated me. It made me a DC fan. I was already a Superman fan, but that flame was dimmering. And Smallville reinvigorated my love for Superman. This is a character I discovered when Superman 78 was released. Superman the movie with Christopher Reeve, directed by Richard Donner, written by Tom Mankiewicz. A fantastic movie. But this show did something special. The first season had a charm about it. It was a deep dive into the character. Smallville is a character study of two characters. Well, the first 7 seasons are. It's a character study on Clark Kent and Lex Luthor. But if you want to go a bit more deeper, it is a character study on Lana Lang and Chloe Sullivan. They all get their times to shine. But really, this show was originally going to be titled by Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, who created the show and developed the show, The Trials of Clark Kent and Lex Luthor, but they decided upon Smallville. So this did something very, very interesting. It said to you, this is a pre-Superman story. And what they did is they captured your imagination by making you say to yourself, oh my God, one day this kid's going to be Superman. Isn't that special? They sold the premise to you. So, as you know, Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling, Lex Luthor and Clark Kent from the show, every Wednesday will be doing a Smallville kind of podcast talking about each episode. So I thought, why don't I do the same thing once a week here on Movies TV Mad and the DC Daily, and let's do it on a Monday. Let's not steal Michael and Tom's fire and do it on a Wednesday. I couldn't do that if I tried. I'd probably get about 5 views or something like that. So today we're going to talk about the very first episode of Smallville, which is titled Pilot. Yes, and the final episode was titled Finale. So pretty nifty, right? So the pilot episode wasn't the first episode of Smallville I watched. I don't think it was anyway. I can't even remember the first episode. All I can remember is it was a Sunday morning. I was hungover, probably still drunk, going through my old set-top box. Back in those days, you just pressed the button and the display used to come on with the channel and the program that's on. I think they still do that, don't they? And I saw the word Smallville pop up on Channel 4 or E4. I was in the UK. And I thought, well, there's only one fucking Smallville, right? It's the place where Superman grew up. Right, great. So I see this bald geezer. It's Michael Rosenbaum, of course. Didn't know his name at the time. Oh my God, please be Lex Luthor. Please say Lex Luthor's in this fucking show. It's Lex Luthor. And he's friends with Clark Kent. But let's get back. That's my experience of, my introduction to Smallville. So what happened with me was I used to run home every Tuesday. That's when it aired over in the UK, because I used to work till about 5:30, 6. So I think it used to start about 6:10. So I used to run from work, get in, watch it or record it. So I was obsessed with Smallville in the first season. Then we moved to Cyprus. I'm in Cyprus now, but I've moved back and forth from the UK and Cyprus quite a few times. But anyway, I was in Cyprus back then. There was no internet. There was no nothing. And I was living in a village. So I didn't have access to seasons 2 and 3. I moved back to the UK at the time. I bought season 2 and 3, binged them. I was definitely obsessed with the show. But we will talk about the pilot episode, and we're going to do that now. So the pilot episode is a very interesting episode because I love how it opens up. It's very sci-fi. So you see Clark's ship going to Earth, but it's followed by these kryptonite meteors following the ship. So basically, is it 1989 we're first introduced to? Because obviously they need a prerequisite to, before Clark becomes a teenager, to show us how the Kents find him. But they don't just set up the Kents finding Clark. They set up Lex's whole arc in the whole 7 seasons of his story. So what happens is the ship's coming to Earth and there's a meteor shower. It's the kryptonite meteor shower, and it's bombarding this, the town centre. And really, for the time, the VFX was amazing. Entity Effects, which was the company Alan Miles used from day one, did a really neat job, because Smallville didn't have the budget of the Arrowverse shows. Let's be clear about that. And a lot of their special effects were amazing. Some of them were ropey, understandably, because of the budget. Wasn't Entity's fault. But most of the VFX on Smallville, even now, looks pretty good. But that meteor shower looks amazing. So we get this brilliant scene with Lionel Luthor and Lex Luthor in the helicopter. And this is a brilliant DC Comics, if you want to talk about, Easter eggs. So basically, he's reading the paper, and the front cover is that the Queens have been killed in an accident, right? So they reference the Queens from day one, which is interesting because the whole concept of that in Smallville is that this whole Veritas storyline, which we'll go into at a later date when I'm reviewing season 7. But anyway, there was this kind of union between the Luthors and the Teagues and Oliver Queen's parents as well. They heard these legends about the Traveller. The Traveller is Clark Kent in the show. So anyway, that's not the time to talk about that. So Lex is clearly scared of being in the helicopter, and he's saying to him, you can't be, Luthors aren't afraid. Open your eyes, Lex. And he's really trying to hammer, this home to him. In other words, be a real man kind of thing. So this dynamic between Lex and Lionel was there from day one, and it's brilliant. John Glover is a workman actor. He's played so many different roles. He's been in Batman and Robin. He's voiced DC characters like the Riddler in DC animation. So he's been around. But for me personally, his greatest performance is as Lionel Luthor in Smallville. This guy, right, I would say this, and some of you are going to laugh at me. I would say this guy is up there as a villain like Homelander and J.R. Ewing all rolled into one. And he doesn't have any superpowers, but this guy is fucking ruthless. And I mean ruthless. Now, he's not a rapist or anything like, we know Homelander's a bit really bad, but this guy is a ruthless bastard. So anyway, they set this thing up with Lex and Lionel. We meet the Kents in the flower shop with Nell, who is Lana's mum. Lana is wearing this fairy princess outfit. She's got the wand. And, a little Lana asks Martha if she'd like to make a wish. So she just bashes gently the wand on Martha's forehead. And then Jonathan, when they're back in the tray, he goes, I know what you wished for. And basically, she wished for a child. So a little bit corny, but it works for the piece. And I still think that was a very emotional moment. Imagine being a woman who can't bear a child, and you want a child. It's absolutely devastating, isn't it? So it's brilliant setup from the very beginning. Going back to the Nell's flower shop, I like the bitchiness between Nell and Martha. She goes, what flowers do you want? And she goes, oh, she wants roses, whatever. And so Nell's going, how about some tiger orchids? So they had this kind of concept about something in the past that happened between Jonathan and Nell, but they decided to banish it a bit. I think that would have been a fun element. They clearly didn't have enough time and space for it, but it was pretty awesome. So you got Annette O'Toole and John Schneider as Jonathan and Martha, brilliant picks. But originally, there was another actress playing Martha, and they had to reshoot elements of the pilot, the meteor shower element of it again. I don't know if you already knew that. So then you get the meteor shower, which is fucking amazing. This kryptonite meteor shower is pelting the town centre. You can see little Lana hiding in a corner. That little actor who played little Lana was fucking amazing. You see the look of fear in her face. But then you get the funniest moment in Smallville history, and there shouldn't be anything funny about this moment, because it is. So Lana's mum and dad have come back to pick her up. The meteor shower is heading towards them. So this couple, right, instead of running, I don't know where they could have run anyway. There was a fucking meteor shower. But they're literally staring up at it, right, until it fucking hits them and kills them. David Nutter is a great director. He directed multiple episodes of X-Files. but I think he should have done something different there. But it's a nitpick. I still love Smallville. It's not me being a hater, but it is kind of funny. So you get the whole meteor shower, and then we go to Lex Luthor. Lionel Luthor is calling out for his son Lex, and he can't find him. And then he finds him kind of hidden with all this greenery all over him. He pulls it off, and basically his hair is shredded. He has no hair. He has one little bit of hair. He has red hair in the opening sequence on the helicopter. He is now bald. The meteor shower has made him bald. He is touched by Clark's arrival. This is massive. And this is the connection between them. And Lex's, destined obsession with the meteors and Smallville and Clark. So we go, is it 14 years or whatever it is, down the line. It's modern times. Clark's now a teenager. And he's reading an article about, kids having, strength and trying to figure it out. He's looking on his laptop computer and Martha calls him. And so there's this discussion, first of many discussions in Smallville, whether Clark should be playing football or not. I love this scene because this sums up the Kent family dynamic. So Jonathan is afraid, look, you can't play football, son. You could hurt someone, you could get overexcited. Clark just wants to be a normal kid. And so if we skip a little bit, there's this brilliant moment, the first meeting of Lex Luthor and Clark Kent. It would be like Hitler meeting Winston Churchill or something like that. So basically Lex is on the phone talking and driving, very naughty, shouldn't be doing it. And he crashes in the river, runs over Clark, by the way. Clark's in the water, saves his life, rips the hood of the car open, and he saves his life. And that's how they're introduced. But Jonathan Kent does not like Lex Luthor, and he doesn't like the Luthors. We don't know why. I won't discuss that here if you're new to Smallville. By the way, if you haven't seen Smallville before and you're very loyally watching this video, I would suggest going to watch the pilot and then watching this video. I know, start watching Smallville. I got Scott Edwards into Smallville, one of my subscribers, and he didn't regret it. He wasn't saying, oh my God, you made me watch that show. So it's amazing. So if you haven't seen Smallville before, listen. Smallville is better. It's the best DC live action franchise ever made. Not that it's got much competition, but everything worked. And they earned their right to be a superhero show. Because they're not really a superhero show in the first season. Maybe not even I wouldn't say they're a superhero show until the 5th season, really. And not even, I would say maybe the 6th season. When it becomes a real superhero show, it's the final 3 seasons, if you ask me. So Lex has met Clark. He's obsessed with Clark. He knows something dodgy's going on. He knows there's no way he could have hit someone at so many miles per hour and they would have lived, let alone saved their life. And so basically, Lex asks for the car to be brought to his mansion. Yes, Lionel Luthor brought a castle from Scotland and built it on Smallville. So it's this brilliant castle. So I like that Lex Luthor is living in a castle. It's a great idea and concept from Alfred Gough and Miles Miller. Absolute genius. And the castle is stunning outside. It's a castle they actually use in X-Men as well and quite a few other shows and movies. Very famous looking, but it's brilliant. And again, there's a reason why Lionel brought the castle to Smallville. In a way, he's been hiding it there for many, many years because there's something very, very well connected to Clark there. Again, we won't find that out until season 7 and the whole Veritas storyline. And so there's this brilliant scene where Clark comes into the castle and Lex and Clark have this discussion. And this is where, if this doesn't sell you on the show, you're never going to be sold on the show. So, Lex explains to Clark what it felt like, drowning. He said he died for a little while and he was flying over Smallville. For the first time, he didn't see a dead end. He says to Clark, we have a destiny together, Clark. No, sorry, I'll start again. He says, how can I forget this fucking piece of dialogue? It's fucking amazing. I don't want anything to get in the way of our friendship or something like that, And before that, how can I forget this? He says, do you think a man, yeah, that's what he says. Do you think a man can fly or something like that? And Clark says only in aeroplanes. Clark hasn't got the gift of flight yet. So again, it makes you think about him being Superman and flying one day. He has no concept that he can fly. So there's this whole conversation, and Lex, as I said, says, I don't want anything getting in the way of our friendship. So he's already obsessed with Clark Kent, and it's a beautiful scene. Again, if you haven't seen the pilot, you really need to, because that really sucks you into this interesting dynamic between Clark and Lex. Because if you read the comics, you know they're going to become enemies. If you've seen the movies, you know they're enemies. So this is a very interesting pre-Superman story where at first Clark and Lex are friends. And they have this, throughout season 1, throughout season 2 and season 3, they have this really amiable friendship. It's very close and it's beautiful and it's emotional. And it really does work for me. And so there's that element. There's another element to this because we find another kid who was affected by the meteor shower. Now, in Smallville, they decided that adults in their late 20s would play teenagers. I hate it. It looks bad. I mean, it doesn't look bad with Tom. He kind of gets away with it. But it looks bad on some of them. But I think Smallville did it better than most shows. But I think now they've learned to use younger actors as younger actors, because when you're at high school with kids, it's optics, isn't it? They've got to look like they're supposed to be there. Old Hollywood didn't used to do that. So this kid, basically, he was infected by the Smallville meteor shower. He's been in a coma for so many years. He gets out and he decides to get revenge on the kids who bullied him at school. And he has some kind of power, I think he can electrocute you or something. So this is the concept of Smallville. Every episode in season 1 and some of season 2, basically we meet what they call a meteor freak, someone who was infected by the meteors. Now, basically, this wasn't possible in the comics or, past movies. This was something that Alan Miles come up with. But what it does is it makes the meteor shower and the meteor freaks make Kryptonite a character on the show. And I think that is so really good and exciting for me, because I like the idea of Kryptonite. I think it depowers Superman, and it's an important thing when you've got a character with so much power and ability. I mean, Smallville, depowers him emotionally, gives him emotional challenges. You can do that on a television show because the emotional dynamics between characters in Smallville was just as epic as the superhero action. You were never bored when Clark wasn't using his powers. And of course, that's very important for a show that's got Clark Kent in it. And Clark has this friend called Chloe Sullivan, played by Alison Mack. The less we say about the actress, the better, because I think some of you know that. But that doesn't ruin my love for this character she played, Chloe Sullivan. Chloe Sullivan is a hero. She did nothing wrong. Well, she should have let him send Davis to the Phantom Zone in season 8. But apart from that, oh yeah, and there's other things. Dating Oliver Queen. Now, anyway, we'll get there. We're talking about pilot. So Chloe, which we don't know at the time, is Lois Lane's cousin. But they weren't allowed to put Lois on the show. DC wouldn't allow them. So they decided to use Chloe as a type of Lois character, but not a replacement for her. And so she basically runs the high school newspaper, The Torch. Brilliant stuff. And she's got this wall with newspaper clippings. She calls it the Wall of Weird. And she's been researching and investigating what happened on the day of the Smallville meteor shower. This is going to attract the attention of not just Lex Luthor and Lionel Luthor. So it's very interesting. And Clark's very upset that she's had this wall all this time and he didn't know. I don't know how Clark missed the fact she had a wall, but maybe she was keeping it a secret. Maybe it's a secret part of the Torch. I don't know. But anyway, Clark's very upset and he sees a picture of Lana because Lana was really hugely affected by the meteor shower. So he runs off. But there's also another brilliant scene in the pilot where Jonathan decides to tell him about his Kryptonian heritage. Now, disclaimer, Jonathan doesn't know what planet he's from. That's something Clark will find out in season 2 when the wonderful late great Christopher Reeve guest stars on the show, a brilliant episode called Rosetta. But because Clark's got all these abilities and, Clark loses his temper with Jonathan because Lex gives him a truck as a thank you. And I know I'm talking about the episode the wrong way around. It's just the way I'm just a random guy. You're just going to have to go with it. So Jonathan says, look, you can't keep the truck Lex Luthor's given you. But Clark goes, I saved the guy's life. I love this bit. You think you deserve a prize, Jonathan says. Again, Jonathan Kent, this is why this is one of the best Jonathan Kents, and Jonathan Kent's always been a great character in live action, because he's trying to draw a line. You know, he's saying to him, you saved the human being's life. You don't deserve a prize for that. You should do that automatically. If we can save people's lives, we should. We shouldn't want rewards. And that's a great lesson from Jonathan, and it's a lesson, you know, young Clark Kent needs to learn. And DC Comics have always said this. Superman is the pure-hearted hero he is. We're not talking about the powers, but he's the character he is because of what he learns in Smallville with the Kents. And this lesson here, that you think you deserve a prize, and, you know, he basically says to Clark, I want you to be normal. But Clark says, I'm not normal. So he puts his hand in this hay shredder or whatever it is. Basically, his shirt sleeve is tore up, but he isn't. So Clark says, I'd give anything to be normal. That's when Jonathan decides he's got to tell him. He shows him the ship he was hiding. It's not a similar scene. It is a dissimilar scene to what we saw in the pilot of Superman and Lois when, you know, Jordan and John discover the ship, because Clark's not willing to front up about it. But Jonathan is. He knows it's time. In fact, he says, it's time, son. And Clark freaks out. And it's a brilliant scene. So Clark runs out, he goes to the graveyard where Lana is visiting her parents, and there is this, I mean, look, the scene's brilliant. It really is, because we really get to know Lana, because this is the moment we need to get to know her, because we haven't really spent much time with Lana up to this point. We know she's dating Whitney, but we don't know what she thinks of Clark, what kind of girl she is, so we get to know her. And, you know, she tells Clark about her life history and the meteors and everything, and, you know, he apologizes. This is one great thing about Smallville season 1. Every time someone tells Clark that they were affected by the meteor shower, he says, I'm sorry. Because Clark feels responsible, because the meteor shower came with him. He believes it's his fault. Now, of course, if he didn't come to Earth, it would never have happened, but Clark didn't set in motion what happened. So it's not his responsibility, but Superman always feels responsible when people get hurt and people die. That's the measure of the character. That's why I love him so much. He doesn't want to accept defeat. He doesn't want one person getting hurt, but not even Superman can save everyone. So that's a beautiful scene again. I love Kristen Krug as Lana, especially in the first season. The pilot, she's got this charm. Kristen was very inexperienced as well, but they all did a great job, because they were all inexperienced in Smallville up to a point, apart from the adult actors, who are absolutely experienced and fantastic. So part of the show is Clark's obsession with Lana, but she's got a boyfriend, she's got Whitney. Now in the pilot, they portray him as the school bully. So what there's this thing called the Scarecrow. So basically, one of the things they do to someone, I suppose you would call it the first year of high school, I don't know how else to describe it, they tie them up as a scarecrow. This is what happened to this kid who's a meteor freak going around getting revenge on all these bullies. So basically, Whitney sees Clark and Lana talking after the graveyard scene, gets jealous. So basically, in an earlier scene, he asks to borrow Lana's kryptonite necklace. She's got a kryptonite necklace, a piece of kryptonite, because it reminds her of what happened to her parents on that day. Anyway, Whitney and his friends, they grab hold of Clark and they decide they're going to use him as the next Scarecrow. But Whitney doesn't know what he's doing here, but he puts the necklace on Clark, which of course is a kryptonite necklace, which weakens Clark. So they tie him on the sticks as a Scarecrow, and this kid who wants to get revenge finds Clark, and Clark's saying, let me down. He goes, no, you're better off here. He says, I'm doing this for you, and, you know, and kids like us. It is about bullying, and I think that's a great kind of piece of social commentary. This is the social commentary we don't get since the apocalypse. If you want to know what the apocalypse is, it's what I'm calling the world we live in since 2016, and mostly entertainment as well. So it's great to catalogue, you know, kids being bullied, and what does that do to those kids? Well, of course, in later life, they want revenge. So he goes to the school, he wants to warm up the water, spray the kids with water so they get burned, so they get scalded with this water. Lex saves Clark, he unties him, but as Clark goes off, Lex finds the kryptonite necklace. This will pay very huge dividends in episode 2 when we talk about that next Monday. So basically Clark fights this meteor freak, beats him, and the kid just wakes up from his slumber and goes, I want to go home. So the kid doesn't go to prison or anything because he's under, basically the idea of the meteor freaks in Smallville. They take, Al Marsh took psychological issues each student has who becomes a meteor freak, and so basically they get the power of that situation. So Amy Adams plays a character who's overweight and is trying to lose weight. And when she starts drinking these kryptonite milkshakes, it affects her weight. And she craves for human flesh. We'll talk about it, of course, when we get to that episode. Yes, Amy Adams was in Smallville. And no Krypton site readers, it's not the worst episode of season 1. There's not a bad episode in season 1. And it certainly isn't this one. So basically, Smallville used to do these classic roundup scenes at the end. So we round up with Jonathan because Clark and Jonathan had words after the spaceship reveal. And Clark says, I'm glad you and Mum were the ones who found me. And Jonathan says the classic line that Martha said at the beginning of the episode. I missed that, I apologise. We didn't find you, son. You found us. In a way, that's true because Jor-El, should I say, planned this whole scenario, even with Clark being sent to the Kents all along. Season 3, another really, really good episode, which we'll talk about because we're going to review and talk about every Smallville episode. As Michael and Tom are doing it, I'm going to get in on this as well because I love Smallville and I loved it and I love talking about it. So then Clark goes back to his loft because you see, Jonathan built him a loft which he calls his Fortress of Solitude. Again, it's that Easter egg. At the time, I never thought we'd see the actual Fortress of Solitude on Smallville. As I've already said, achievement among achievement among achievement. It never ducked anything Superman in Smallville. And so he imagines this scenario where Lana's there and she goes, I promised you a dance or something. So they start dancing to this brilliant song. Forgot what it's called. But brilliant song, I still listen to it today. Smallville had great music at the time and made a lot of unknown groups and artists very successful by playing their music, something we don't get today on DC TV. So basically, this is all in Clark's imagination. As he opens his eyes, Lana's just been dropped off by Whitney at her pad, which is opposite Clark's farm. And he's got a telescope. He spies on Lana. I don't think this would work. The SJWs and the extremists would go mad about this. But anyway. And so basically she's waving and then she's kind of thinking to herself and she's a bit weirded out. I don't know. I don't get that bit. But I suppose it's just it's an interesting moment between Clark and Lana. And it just catalogues how Clark is madly in love with this girl. And it's the beginning of a great love story because the Clark and Lana story was really good. What's amazing about Smallville is the achievement that they did a really great love story for Clark and Lana and Lois and Clark. And nobody's ever done that before in live action, not for both these characters. And this is the beauty of Smallville. So what did the pilot episode of Smallville do for me? It did what all good pilots do. It shows you the premise. It shows you what the show is going to be, but it keeps a little back. And so it develops its story and expands as the seasons go on. But this show didn't tease me a costume. It didn't have Clark Kent in a suit. He's not Superboy. That's not what they wanted to do. So I was fine with it because I was seeing on this show what they were going to do. They never told me that Clark or Tom would wear the costume on this show. They never did. That's assumptions that other fans make. And certainly as the show was active through seasons 1 to 10 pre-finale, that was fine. I still think we should have had a scene of Clark in the Superman costume properly flying over Smallville. That would have been amazing. But again, it's just a nitpick. So I hope you enjoyed me looking back at the pilot episode of Smallville. We will be doing this every Monday here at Movies TV Mad and the DC Daily. This has been the DC Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow with even more DC Daily. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.